Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk. We're back again with you guys for another show for what is the fifth instalment of our tactical breakdown series. The show where basically I look at Arsenal's players where they're linked to, who they should be signing, and most likely they could be signing, but you know, it depends on how much money we decide to spend. Stan, please get the coffers out, son. So we basically have moved on now from talking about Carrasco in the previous episode and looking at some youngsters like Martinelli and Torres into players in which it looks like it could be happening in Pra and in Pra. Remember, I'm getting that right again. And Anderson. So now looking at someone who's, well, it's up in the air at the moment. The links are going out there on Twitter. The links are out there in the media. And this player is a left back. And it's fair to say that if you were to say at the start of the season who Arsenal should be looking to sign players in these positions, left back was certainly one. And there's many reasons for that, amongst other things. But the main one really is that we're not really satisfied with what we've got. And it's one of the positions that we seem as Arsenal fans to feel very vulnerable to opposition's attack, especially when we see fast technical winners running down our left-hand side and their right and completely taking advantage of the open space that seems to be there. So what I want to talk about today is Celtic's left-back Kieran Tierney. Now, before I do, once again, massive thanks to all the people that have tuned in over the last couple of episodes, who have been liking it, who have been subscribing. I mean, to think that we're only a few hundred subs now of 10,000, which for me was a pipe dream when I took the show over. So massive thanks to the comments, which you can see have been absolutely fantastic, and I read through every single one of them, believe me, as one pops up on my screen just as I say that. So when we're looking at someone then, if we go straight into things about Kieran Tierney, this is a left back with brilliant potential. This is a left back who has got a massive ceiling, much higher than the current left backs we have. We have obviously Nacho Monreal, who, if we decide to take up his contract option, will be having one more year at the club. Most likely he will leave after that point. And then we've got Kolasinac. Now Kolasinac has actually been linked to a 25-ish million pound move to Barcelona of all places. Now, if you'd have said at the start of the season that after this year Kolasinac is going to be basically sold to Barcelona, you would have expected he must have had a hell of a season. Now, I'm not saying his season weren't fantastic, because I don't think it was, but it certainly wasn't amazing. It weren't a season in which you'd think Barcelona would be coming in with a bid for him. So if we can somehow get some money in for him, that would pretty much fee up the same amount of money that we need to sign Kieran Tierney, who is reportedly looking to go to Arsenal for about £25 million, which for me, and you're looking at the potential this guy has, is an absolute steal. So it's differing of reports, but 25 million seems to run. So tactical analysis then, tactical breakdown. Let's get straight into things and talk about it. What you've seen from the thumbnail of the show, and hopefully you've had a look at that, is that I wanted to sort of compare him to Kolasinac and compare him to arguably the best left back in the Premier League right now in Andrew Robertson. Andrew Robertson, also a compatriot of Kieran Tierney, his direct competition for that left back slot in the Scottish national setup. And whilst I can't see him getting Robertson out of the way too soon, he has certainly got the ceiling and the potential to get and compete with Robertson moving forwards. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to look into some of the statistics and some of the facts and some of the movement of what these three players do and how they stack up against each other. So if we start with obviously positioning wise, as I said, huge issues at left back for Arsenal. Vulnerability is a real big issue. And you can see from here that the heat map for Kolasinac, which is on the screen now, the amount of running that he does when considering he's meant to be a wing back playing in a system where we have three at the back. When you now look at what Robertson provides for Liverpool, is massively different. It's hugely different. Robertson is up and down that flank, constantly trying to get balls into the box, constantly running back to get into position, to intercept passes, to recover balls. And Kolasinac simply doesn't do that. So now if we have a look at what Kieran Tierney's heat map looks like, which you can see on the screen now, the similarities to Robertson are much closer. He has got that energy. He's nowhere near as energetic as Klopp seems to be employing. And maybe you can put that down to the fact that Celtic don't need that sort of domination that Liverpool do in the games against much tougher opponents. But he is showing that he's still willing to run up and down a hell of a lot more than what Kolasinac has done for Arsenal. As it's clear to see, that left flank is being absolutely dominated by those two Scotsmen. And if Tierney can replicate the type of form and the type of running that he's shown in Celtic colours in an Arsenal shirt, well then we've got a hell of a running player on our team to boost us with our stamina and the amount of coverage on the ground that we can make over the 90 plus minutes. Okay, so it's a massive difference in what he provides for Kolasinac in that sense. Then if we look at sort of passing and where we're at with the passing is actually extremely again, interesting because you've got passes being completed at the rate of 82% for Tierney, 60 being played for each game. And then you've got long passes, 6.7. Actually, let's do it this way. 60 passes are being made each game by Tierney. 82% of them are being done to perfect accuracy. Kolasinac, 44 passes. Less passes per game, a lower pass accuracy, 79%. Robertson, slightly more passes, 65 passes are being made per game, 83% of them on target. So you can see the very similarities that are going on between the accuracy. There's only 5 passes between Robertson and Tierney, but only 1% difference in their accuracy, with Robertson slightly coming out on top. In terms of the long passes, spraying those balls across, playing the balls in behind from distance, well, Tierney, we've got a 6.7 are made every game with a 50% accuracy. And then if we look at long passes for Kolasinac, he's got a slightly higher percentage accuracy of 53, but he's making nearly a third, or just under a third, of the number of passes at 2.3. Long passes for Tierney was 6.7, 2.3 for Kolasinac. The difference there is huge. Then you got Robertson, 6.7, exactly the same as Tierney. 52%, so again, 2% improvement on Tierney, but this is a more established, more developed player in Robertson. So the similarities there, again, are really clear to see. Then we look at crossing. This is where it slightly differs, and you'll be glad to know it differs in Tierney's favour. So we'll start with Robertson then. Robertson makes 4.5 crosses per game with about 29% accuracy. Kolasinac, less crosses, 3.3 per game, but as you can imagine, less crosses means better accuracy because more of them are going on target. 40% of those meet their target, and then 2% less crossing accuracy than Kolasinac has Tierney. He's got 38% crossing accuracy, but he makes 5.5 crosses per game. So slightly less accuracy than Kolasinac. Way more crosses are being made. More crosses are being made than Robertson, and more of them are meeting their target. And if you saw how Robertson performed, especially in last season's Champions League final, with the crossing he was putting across there, and throughout this season as well, and into the Champions League final, his deliveries usually are excellent, and they obviously get a lot of praise for what he does. So the fact that Tierney is out crossing him more often and more accurately is even more positive. If we then look at the dribbling, because if we look at dribbling, you talk about a defender, and especially a wing back or a left back, dribbling is huge. And for Tierney, and where that heat map came into things, the results are quite staggering in how many he does. So in terms of the dribbles per game, he makes 5 dribbles per game with a 71% success rate. You look at Kolasinac, 1.92 dribbles per game with 61% of those coming off. And then Robertson, again, 1.9 with 60% coming off. So not only is Tierney doing twice as many dribbles per match as both of the other two left-backs, but he's got a higher success rate by over 10% than the other two. Then you look at how many times he loses the ball in the final third. He loses it 12.7 times per game, 31% of those in their own half. Now remember, when we looked at Carrasco and Iwobi's comparison yesterday, Iwobi was losing the ball about 22% of his own half, Carrasco about 12%. These are left-backs though, so they are obviously in that half more often, so you have to take that into account. So he loses it 31% of the time in his own half. Kolasinac loses it 34% of the time in his own half, and Robertson loses about 30%, so just slightly under what Tierney is providing, okay? So you've got the same amount of losses that are going on. Tierney with 12, Kolasinac with 10, and Robertson with 11. So very, very similar. But Tierney is losing it a lot less in his own half, is actually doing a lot more with it. Maybe that's down to league quality, maybe not. In terms of recoveries, this links into defending, but still with dribbling, because you've got to get those balls back. Tierney recovers the ball 6.7 times per game, with 33% of those in the opposition half. Kolasinac higher this time, 7.2 times per game, 31% successfully in the opposition's half. And Robertson, 8.1 times per game. This is where Robertson really shines for Liverpool, recovering the ball in the opposition's half 38% of the time, higher than both of the other two. So that's something that Tierney definitely has to aspire to. But he wins it more, Tierney does, than Kolasinac does in the opponent's half, just not as much. So that's something that Kolasinac does have going for him. Then finally, if we look at defending, the amount of duels that he wins, 18.6 per game, 40% of those duels that he makes he wins. 18 duels per game, 40% he wins. Kolasinac only does 15 duels per game, probably down to the fact he's playing for a more dominant Premier League side. 38% of those he wins, so 2% less than Tierney. And then Robertson, he makes less duels as well, again, probably down to the fact he's in the Premier League, 14.7, and he only wins 35.7% of those. So 40% of more duels Tierney has, he wins those tackles, he wins those challenges. Interceptions, Tierney's there with 4, Kolasinac with 3.6 and Robertson with 3.5. He's intercepting the ball a lot more than our others are on average across a whole season. That's a lot more. There's 18 more interceptions around that per season than the other two. So overall, you're looking at a very, very coherent defensive player that knows that running up and down the pitch, as you saw from the heat maps, is a massive part of his game. But the dribbling is there, more dribbles than way double the amount of dribbles than Kolasinac and Robertson are making, and he's doing it more often and more successfully. You've got really good defending stats, really good passing stats. The amount of different types of crosses that we actually see from Tierney is great as well. So ultimately, it's up to you guys and what your thoughts are. And please do leave, again, the comments in the description box what your thoughts are on Tierney and how he stacks up against both Kolasinac and Robertson. But this isn't where the video ends, because I like to give you some alternatives of what we could have. In terms of realistic options, Real Betis' Junior Firpo, he's got the links to Manchester United and Manchester City, but he's looking at around 26 million, so a very, very similar price, very, very good player coming from Real Betis. Grimaldo of Benfica, probably a little bit more expensive, might not be able to get him due to Champions League not being a thing for us this season, but Grimaldo, a very, very exciting young Spaniard at left-back playing for Benfica. And then more the players that have now, because we've dropped out of Champions League, the likes of Chilwell of Leicester and Tagliafico of Ajax, probably out of our price range now because we're not in Champions League football. And one we've already missed was Nico Schulz of Hoffenheim, who's moved to Borussia Dortmund for around £22 million. Was in our price bracket and we didn't go for him. But as our good friend Drew will tell you, Germans like to stay in the German league most often, so maybe that's why. I hope you've enjoyed the little bit longer show today. Please, as I said, like, subscribe if you're new around here, and leave those comments in the comment box and let me know what your thoughts are on Kieran Tierney. Is he the left back you want? Maybe you want someone else. If so, let me know who it is. But again, we'll see you very, very soon tomorrow for the next video. We'll be very, very soon back again. And as always, up the Arsenal.